This video is part of our series of videos on the chemistry of living things. It builds upon our previous video that discussed the basic structure of atoms and how and why atoms form ions and bonds. To watch it, click here. In today's video, we will be discussing covalent bonding by looking at the bonds created by the four main atoms that make up 96% of all living things: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. So let's get started. Carbon, atom number 6 on the periodic table, has 6 protons and 6 electrons, 2 electrons in its first orbital and 4 in its second orbital. As explained in our previous video, it needs 4 more electrons to attain a stable electron configuration. One way for it to attain these 4 extra electrons is by making bonds. Bonding is a way for an atom to share electrons with other atoms so that they can both compensate for an insufficient number of electrons. For each electron that is missing, an atom needs to make one bond. So to compensate for 4 missing electrons, carbon needs to make 4 bonds, or in other words, it needs to share 4 electrons with other atoms. Hydrogen has 1 proton in its nucleus and 1 electron in its first orbital. It needs 1 more electron to attain a stable configuration, so hydrogen always makes 1 bond. Oxygen, with 8 protons in its nucleus and 8 electrons, needs 2 more electrons for stability. Oxygen therefore always makes 2 bonds. And lastly, nitrogen, number 7 on the periodic table, has 7 protons and 7 electrons in its neutral form. So nitrogen can attain stability by making 3 bonds. So let's use this information to build some common molecules seen in biology and nature. Let's start with hydrogen gas. 2 hydrogen atoms combine to one another to form a stable gas, hydrogen gas, H2. Each atom is 1 electron short of having a stable number of electrons, so by sharing their electrons, they both attain a stable number of 2 electrons. Another very simple molecule is water. Oxygen needs to make 2 bonds. It can do this by binding to 2 hydrogen atoms that both need to make 1 bond. Oxygen attains a stable number of 8 electrons in its second orbital, and each hydrogen has 2 electrons. When an oxygen atom binds to 2 hydrogen atoms, it forms H2O, water. Nitrogen needs to make 3 bonds to attain a stable electron configuration, so it can join with 3 hydrogen atoms to form NH3, ammonia. Carbon likes to make 4 bonds, so it can bind to 4 hydrogens to create CH4, methane. Alcohols are created by adding an OH group, oxygen and hydrogen, to carbon molecules. For example, if you add an OH group to methane, you get methanol. Atoms can sometimes partake in double bonds by sharing more than 1 electron with the same atom. For example, oxygen, which needs to make 2 bonds for its stability, can make 2 bonds with another oxygen atom to create gaseous oxygen, O2. This is the second most abundant gas in our atmosphere, making up about 21% of gases in the air. Triple bonds are also possible between atoms that are able to make 3 or more bonds, like carbon or nitrogen. For example, nitrogen, which needs to make 3 bonds for its stability, can make 3 bonds with another nitrogen atom to create nitrogen gas, N2. Nitrogen gas is the most abundant gas in the atmosphere, accounting for 78% of the air we breathe. Let's look at some larger molecules. Let's start by taking 4 carbon atoms and linking them side by side. We will then add hydrogens around the first 3 carbon atoms. To the last carbon, we will add a double bonded oxygen and a single bonded oxygen. The single bonded oxygen will also need a hydrogen. This is the fatty acid called butyric acid. Fatty acids are the most abundant fats in our bodies, and all have this same basic structure of a string of carbons surrounded by hydrogen with what is called a carboxylic acid group at one end. Notice that all the carbons in this molecule has 4 bonds around them, all the hydrogens 1 bond, and all the oxygens 2 bonds. Let's keep this carboxylic acid group and create 1 more common molecule in the body. Let's add another carbon, and to this new carbon, let's add 2 hydrogen and an amine group. This molecule is called glycine. It's an amino acid. Amino acids are the building blocks used to build all proteins in the body. In this video, we learned that covalent bonding is a way for atoms to share electrons in order to attain a stable electron configuration. We learned that in order to attain stability, hydrogen always makes 1 bond, oxygen 2, nitrogen 3, and carbon 4. And we use this information to show that these atoms can combine in many different ways to form a wide variety of molecules in our body. All of our videos come with a multiple choice quiz, a short answer test, and a public Kahoot that can all be accessed free of charge. The information for these resources can be found in the description below, or you can click this next video that explains how to easily access all these great resources. And if you're enjoying our videos, please hit the subscribe button.